A retired janitor in Vermont named Ronald Reed drove a used Toyota, clipped coupons every Sunday, and wore the same flannel jacket for years. When he died in 2014, his neighbors assumed he had nothing. Then lawyers opened his estate and found stock portfolios worth $8 million he had never spent a single cent of. Ronald Reed is usually held up as a hero of personal finance, proof that anyone can build wealth through patience and discipline. But a hedge fund manager named Bill Perkins looked at that story and saw something completely different. He saw a man who traded his entire life for a number he never used. That argument became a book called Die with Zero, and it challenges almost everything the financial world has agreed on for the last 50 years. The core idea sounds simple, but it cuts deep. Your life is not measured by your net worth when you die. It is measured by the experiences you had while you were alive. Every dollar sitting untouched in a brokerage account on the day you die represents time you traded away and never converted into anything meaningful. Perkins puts it bluntly. Your life is the sum of your experiences, and at the end, you will not replay spreadsheets in your head, you will replay moments. Think about someone in their final days, lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by family. Nobody in that room has ever said, "I wish I had optimized my asset allocation better." What they say is, "I wish I had traveled more," or "I wish I had not waited so long to spend time with the people I love." A 2023 survey of 1,500 American retirees found that 61% wished they had prioritized experiences earlier instead of focusing almost entirely on savings. Not because saving was wrong, but because waiting cost them something money could not buy back. That sounds like a soft philosophical point, but Perkins backs it up with a concept that actually reframes how we should think about spending, and he calls it memory dividends. Imagine you take a trip to Kyoto, Japan, when you are 30 years old. You walk through bamboo forests, eat ramen in a tiny shop with 6 seats, and watch the sun set over a 1,000-year-old temple. That single trip pays you emotional dividends for the next 50 years. You tell stories about it at dinner parties. You smile when a photo surfaces on your phone. You carry that experience as part of who you are. Now imagine taking that exact same trip at 70. The flight is harder on your body, the walking is slower, and you might only enjoy those memories for 10 or 15 years. Same trip, same cost, but a drastically different lifetime return. We all understand compound interest when it comes to money. Invest $10,000 at 25 and it grows for decades. But Perkins argues we completely ignore compound interest when it comes to experiences. The earlier you invest in a meaningful experience, the longer it compounds inside your memory. And this is not just about exotic travel. Think about something as simple as coaching your kid's soccer team when they are 7. That season creates memories you share with your child for decades. Inside jokes, rainy Saturdays on the field, the look on their face when the team wins for the first time. You both carry those dividends forward. But if you skip that season because work is busy, you do not get a makeup year. They turn 8, then 12, then 18, and the window closes permanently. This leads to an uncomfortable realization that runs through the entire book. Some of the best experiences in your life have expiration dates that have nothing to do with money. Backpacking through Southeast Asia with a 30-pound pack requires a body that cooperates. Building a startup on 4 hours of sleep requires energy that fades with every passing year. Playing on the floor with your kids requires them to still be kids. You cannot bank these experiences for later, because later your body, your energy, and your circumstances will be fundamentally different. So if memory dividends reward early investment, why do most people delay their best experiences until retirement? Perkins has a blunt answer: because they are running on autopilot. Think about the standard financial script most people follow. Study hard, get a stable job, work for 40 years, save aggressively, retire at 65, then finally start living. Almost everyone follows some version of this plan, but very few people ever stop to ask who wrote it and whether it actually fits their life. That retirement model was designed during the industrial era when coal miners and factory workers wrecked their bodies by 50 and life expectancy was decades shorter than it is today. Pensions were structured around a workforce that physically could not continue, so retirement was not a reward but a medical necessity that lasted maybe a decade before death. Today, life expectancy in developed countries is north of 80. Many careers involve sitting at a desk, not swinging a pickaxe. Knowledge workers can be productive well into their 70s. Yet we still treat 65 as the magic number where life is supposed to begin, as if nothing about the world has changed since 1935 when Social Security was created. The Harvard Study of Adult Development, which tracked participants for over 80 years, found that the strongest predictor of happiness and long life was not wealth or career success. It was the quality of a person's relationships and the richness of their shared experiences. Not income, not net worth, but how deeply someone was connected to other people through lived moments together. Perkins builds on this research by dividing life into 3 distinct seasons, and this is where the book gets practical in a way that most financial advice never does. The first season he calls the go-go years, roughly your 20s through your 40s. High energy, high mobility, high tolerance for discomfort and adventure. This is when you can climb Kilimanjaro, sleep on overnight trains across Europe, launch a business from your kitchen table, and recover from a rough night in 20 minutes. Your body says yes to almost everything, and so does your curiosity. The second season is the slow-go years, your 50s through your 70s. You are still active, but you prefer comfort over intensity. A luxury cruise through the Greek islands fits better than a backpacking trip through Thailand. You want the window seat and the hotel with room service, not the hostel bunk. Your experiences shift from physical adventure to cultural richness and relaxation. The third season is the no-go years, roughly 80 and beyond. Mobility is limited and health becomes the central concern of every day. Travel gets harder. Adventures shrink to a smaller radius. A dinner with grandchildren might be the highlight of the month, and that is perfectly fine, but it is a very different life than the one you could have lived at 35. The problem is that the typical spending pattern is the exact inverse of a person's ability to enjoy it. They spend almost nothing during their go-go years because they are saving. They spend cautiously during their slow-go years because they are worried. And then they sit on a mountain of cash during their no-go years when they can barely use it. $1 in your 30s can buy an adventure that shapes who you become. $1 in your 80s often buys a medical bill or sits untouched in a savings account, earning interest for no one. But this is where the book gets truly uncomfortable for high achievers, because Perkins argues that many successful people fall into a specific trap. They keep working long past the point where extra money actually improves their life. Picture a 55-year-old consultant named Laura earning $350,000 a year. She has saved aggressively for 3 decades, and her retirement accounts are fully funded. Her house is paid off, and her net worth is more than enough to support her comfortably for the rest of her life. Her daughter is graduating college next spring. Her parents, both in their early 80s, are getting frail. Her father was just diagnosed with early-stage memory loss. The clock on meaningful time with him is ticking in a way that spreadsheets cannot capture. Laura tells herself just one more year, one more bonus, one more promotion. But every extra year of 60-hour weeks is a trade. She is trading the last clear-minded years with her father for money she mathematically does not need. She is trading her daughter's final summer before adulthood for a slightly bigger number on a retirement dashboard. And if you ask Laura why, she will say she is being responsible. Perkins would say she is being afraid. He calls this the optimal stopping point. There comes a moment when working longer costs you more in irreplaceable experiences than it gives you in financial security. Time is non-renewable. Money is renewable. You can always earn more money, but you cannot earn back your father remembering your name. Financial planners talk constantly about safe withdrawal rates and sustainable spending. Perkins flips the question entirely. What is your safe enjoyment rate? How much life are you withdrawing from your remaining years while your money just sits there growing for a future that needs it less and less? This brings us to the boldest idea in the entire book. Aim to die with zero. Not literally zero. Perkins is not suggesting you gamble your retirement on guessing the exact date of your death. He is arguing that if you die with millions of dollars untouched, you made a massive miscalculation. Every dollar you earned represented hours worked, stress absorbed, weekends sacrificed, and time away from people you love. If that dollar never converted into an experience or a gift or a memory, then the life energy you traded for it was wasted. He also challenges the way we think about inheritance. The average inheritance in America arrives when recipients are in their late 50s or 60s, according to Federal Reserve data. By that point, the recipient is usually financially stable, and the money barely changes their life. It goes into an already full retirement account, or pays off a mortgage that was nearly finished anyway. But what if you gave your children meaningful support at 30 when they are trying to buy their first home, launch a career, or reduce the suffocating stress of raising young kids on a tight budget? The same $100,000 has a completely different impact at 30 than at 60. Perkins argues that giving money early, when it can transform someone's trajectory, is far more valuable than leaving a lump sum after you are gone. Now, the obvious pushback, and it deserves real space. What if you live longer than expected? What about a catastrophic medical emergency or a market crash that cuts your portfolio in half? What about inflation quietly eating through your savings over 2 decades? Perkins does not wave these away because he is not arguing for recklessness. Insurance exists to cover catastrophic risk. Annuities can guarantee a baseline income that outlives you regardless of how long you survive, and long-term care planning can protect against the single biggest financial threat in old age. The tools are available. The goal is not to run your bank account to zero and hope for the best. The goal is to stop accumulating 5 or 10 times more than you will ever need simply because fear tells you to keep going. And there is a deeper criticism worth acknowledging. Perkins wrote this book as a wealthy man, a poker player and energy trader who had the luxury of optimizing his spending because his baseline was already secure. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, die with zero is not a philosophy. It is Tuesday. The book works best as a challenge to people who have already achieved financial stability, but cannot bring themselves to actually enjoy it. Ronald Read died with $8 million and a lifetime of coupons. He was 92 years old. The money went to a local library and a hospital, which is generous and meaningful. But Perkins would ask a harder question. What could Ronald Read's life have looked like if he had spent even a fraction of that fortune on himself while he was alive? What trips did he skip? What meals did he eat alone that could have been shared with someone he cared about? What years did he spend counting pennies when he could have been collecting experiences? You do not have to agree with every word and die with zero. The book has real blind spots. It underestimates how much financial anxiety shapes decisions for people without a hedge fund salary. It assumes a level of health and mobility that not everyone gets, and the phrase die with zero sounds dangerously reckless in a country where a single hospital visit can cost more than a car. But the central question still lands, and it lands hard. Are you building wealth, or are you building a life? Because at some point, those two goals stop being the same thing, and the people who never notice that divergence are the ones who end up the richest people in the cemetery. So picture yourself at 75, scrolling through old photos on your phone. That trip to Kyoto you took at 32, you can still feel the quiet of the bamboo forest. That year, you chose to work less and be home more when your kids were small. You would not trade it for any amount of money. The moments you created because you refused to wait for someday. Now ask yourself one thing. What is the experience you have been putting off, and what exactly are you waiting for? If this made you rethink how you spend your time and your money, subscribe.